After Friday night's embarrassing stand-up set at the White House Correspondents' Dinner Part 2, it's clear that Donald Trump's second term is completely falling apart. So, of course, his instinct is to do what he's always done: run away and golf. Yes, the man is fleeing D.C. once again. As of this weekend, he is back at Bedminster for his 11th visit since taking office, his 130th day on one of his own golf courses in 545 days as president. And he's doing all of that while his war is collapsing, while his Senate majority is almost certainly brain dead in a hospital bed, and he can't even get a room full of his own sycophants to laugh at his jokes anymore. That's the most pathetic part. So let's start there. On Friday night, as we all watched in horror, the White House Correspondents' Dinner happened again for some reason. And of course, Trump got up and he bombed. Just dead silence through all of the jokes, if you can even call them that. So bad that he did what every bombing comic does: jokes about the fact that his jokes were bombing. And even that bombed. At one point, he did this whole bit about a senator getting a text from his wife asking him to come upstairs and, quote, make love to me. And the punchline was, quote, I can't do both. And then he looked out at the room and said, does anybody get that one? And nobody did, of course. So he goes, I thought that was actually pretty good. That was actually the only thing I thought was good in the whole frickin' stupid speech they wrote. The guy who is used to getting standing ovations from his cult followers can't even get a courtesy laugh. And might I mention, it's an ironic joke given that Donald Trump and Melania sleep in separate bedrooms and the president himself can't really move around that well. And speaking of unable to move around, Mitch McConnell, one of the guys who spent decades building the car Trump is driving off a cliff right now, has been in the hospital for weeks and hasn't cast a Senate vote since June 11th. Let me say that again, June 11th. And his office still won't say what's wrong with him. We know he was unconscious when he was admitted. We know there was an emergency dispatch audio describing a cardiac arrest at his house. He's 84 years old. You do the math. Republicans currently hold the Senate by a margin so thin that one missing 84-year-old is enough to stop the entire process, and it has been hilarious to watch. Nobody wants to say out loud that the party propping up Trump's agenda is being run by guys who are dying in office and won't let go of the wheel. And then there's the war. Trump keeps insisting is over or restarting or is won or isn't lost, which is weird because he's ended this war 10 times and we don't know if it's over or not. The ceasefire he announced, of course, collapsed again. Iran shut down the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. is back to launching strikes, and Iran is back to launching strikes as well, while the self-appointed greatest deal maker of all time has accomplished two big things: higher prices and dead Americans. The pedo-in-chief can't land a joke. A dying man is holding up his agenda. He's kind of a dying man as well. And the war Trump says he's won is only getting worse. And so what is he doing? He's hiding in New Jersey. He's coming apart at the seams, but at least his golf swing is improving. Well, that's according to Trump. So much like everything else he says, we can't trust him. But we can trust the people who we are going to be speaking with today. Friends of the show, all three of them, starting with the only person worth watching at the Fox propaganda outlet. That is Jessica Tarlov, who is out with a new book that you are going to want to read. And speaking of things you are going to want to read, Congresswoman Yassamin Ansari is out with a new letter calling for the subpoena of Barron Trump to investigate his connection to Andrew Tate and the crimes of him and his brother. And of course, we are wrapping it all up with another friend of the show, Krystal Ball, someone who I have been a fan of for so long. We're talking about the Democratic Party. We're talking about Donald Trump. We're talking about the DSA. We're talking about so much more. It is all coming up, as it always is. It's going to be you. It's going to be me. It's going to be my three great guests. And as always, it's happening right now on Sunday. Jessica Tarlov, thank you so much for joining me on Sunday.
Thank you for having me. It's exciting to be on your fairly new, enormous Sunday show. So
I appreciate that.
Thanks
that
for
is
making
not
me your like fifth or sixth guest, right?
Well, I would have had you earlier, but you're a tough person to book. You're spending all your time over there with Jesse Waters. Hopefully this can be a little bit more enjoyable.
I've known Jesse longer than you. So, the relationship goes back, goes deep, is fraught and annoying and complicated sometimes, but, we're newer friends.
Well, this is what we're here to talk about is the fraughtness, the complication, the difficulty. And this is what you wrote a book about. I'm assuming it is going to be a bestseller because why wouldn't it? You're incredible. Can you tell the people what the book is about? And I think they kind of expect that it is about disagreement. It's also in the title. Tell us what the book is about, why you chose to write right now.
Okay. So the book is called I Disagree, Winning Arguments Without Losing Friends. For those of you that are already, gearing up to write in the comments, well, what if I want to lose those friends? That is also okay too.
Totally an option.
I know that is a feature of the Trump era. I like my job and want to keep my job. So I also need to keep my friends in the process. But the book is a mashup of a memoir and a how-to, and it uses my life experiences, everything from what life was like from kindergarten until today to really hone in on the tips and tricks and skills that I have built over those years to make me a better debater, a better disagreeer, which I don't think is a word, and I should probably figure that out before I go on book tour. But someone who participates regularly in very contentious conversations. A lot of emphasis, obviously, on making data-based arguments. It's a huge part of who I am. Went and did a PhD in political science, worked as a pollster. There is a number that you can always find to represent the story that you are trying to tell, and in the importance of making arguments that are rooted in facts and data, but also in humanity and, picking and choosing your battles in the moments where it's better to say nothing too. So.
Well, we're coming off of a story this week, speaking of the numbers that you're always using to really upset Jesse Watters and Greg Gutfeld, in which the Pentagon has been scrubbing numbers of casualties in this war, describe the seriousness of injuries, and a Trump era in which actual intelligence in every regard has been under attack. How do you still lean on those numbers and trust them and know that you're using them in the best faith possible?
I think that to some degree, we have to just keep on with the plan. And the plan is to continue to live in a fact-based world. And that at some point, a portion of MAGA will come back to reality. And I don't know if that happens right at the kickoff of 2029 when the Ossoff presidency starts or, whenever that time may come. But I do know from doing this, I've been now at Fox for 10 years, that even the most deeply entrenched supporters of the president who seem like they're buying his shit hook, line, and sinker, they do hear the arguments against it. And I always say I'm not necessarily trying to change minds, I'm trying to open them. And the best way to open minds to the idea that there might be another perspective worth considering is to make these data-based arguments. And when you build up enough ammo and when you come to those conversations from a place of good faith, you can't control how they're coming into it. But if you are doing your best and you're also treating people with respect, they pick up on it. And I've felt that certainly over the last decade, meeting people who watch Fox out in the wild, who may not agree with my politics, but they know that I'm a good faith actor and that I'm just not making shit up on the spot. And part of that is, hammering these plot lines, like how dare they scrub the 4 soldiers who lost their lives because the timing didn't work. Or, you didn't even mention this in the lies about the numbers, that Pete Hegseth sat down in front of the Senate and said they've only spent $37.5 billion so far in this war. I think it's like $130 billion and going up on a daily basis. So being calm and methodical about it and also being sensitive to the fact that when they hear things that fly in the face of their perspective or their worldview, that it actually turns on their threat sensors. I like to think about it like that they're actually getting hurt by this information. Like there's a physical response to it. So be gentle, right? Like I'm gentle with my toddlers and I'm gentle with my Jesse.
Is that how you see him sometimes, behaving like a baby?
An enormous toddler. Yeah.
A lot of people see that every single day, and like the gut check reaction of like people like myself is just like, how do you do this? And I'm sure that's when you're in New York, you probably bump into a lot more libs like us than the people who are going to scream you down. And I'm sure the reaction is always like, oh, Jessica, why do you do this to yourself? How much of it is like, do you read the comments on YouTube or Twitter from the MAGA people? Because I go and look at them when I see the 5 pop up, because sometimes I like to rewatch or grab clips on YouTube. Is that like the spirit of what keeps you going? Someone going like, you know what, Jessica's all right. I understand the point. I don't agree. Is that the fuel that you run on?
I got all sorts of different kinds of fuels that get me going. So I love the adoring comments from liberals that are
drop them in the chat. Drop them in the chat.
Drop them in the chat. I love them. I will like them. I will
Jessica.
respond to them. Words of affirmation is my love language. Everybody knows it. My husband knows exactly what to do. It's like a bad day and he's like, you have never looked more beautiful. And I'm like, that's it. Everything's good. We're going to make it another year. So I like the positive comments. I like I don't agree with your politics, but you seem like a good person, or you're part of the ensemble. We say we're like that, everyone's favorite dysfunctional family. And I use the negative comments too as fuel, not only to gut check what it is that I said or consider, might they have a point? And usually I don't necessarily think that they do, but it is another perspective to consider. But to really enmesh myself in the national discourse, which is frankly pretty nasty at this moment, and to take stock of the role that I'm playing in how our politics plays out. And I write about it in the book. My first chapter is called Taking Shit from the Most Powerful Man in the World. And it's about what happens when the president is giving you terrible reviews. And he literally titles them like review. The 5 is good, except for Jessica Tarlov. Let's fire Jessica Tarlov. Jessica Tarlov is, what does he say? That I have a jittery presentation.
A terrible voice, which I disagree with. And we've had a conversation about this. Yeah.
Unendurable.
What was that first one like? For people who don't have their hands on the book yet, because obviously you talk about Trump. Like, what was that first? Oh, the president of the United States is talking about me. How does that hit? What's the first thought when you see that?
Well, it actually happened years ago. Do you remember when he held the Bible upside down? Yeah, it was a segment that I guess wasn't supposed to be about that, but I brought it up. It was supposed to, I guess, be cast as this conversation about how dangerous the Black Lives Matter protests were and how Donald Trump was justified in everything that he was doing to crack down on free speech, which I vehemently disagreed with. And then I thought I'd just get in this extra shot that he's such a fake Christian that he can't even hold the Bible right side up. And so when I saw that he was watching, and it wasn't for the 5, it was America's Newsroom, it was in the morning, I was like, oh, this one's different, right? This gives you like a pit in your stomach, also a little bit of a, oh my God moment, because he had obviously been attacking people before me. It's nothing new. And it's not necessarily a unique story that way, though I think, being a liberal on a conservative leaning channel makes it a little bit different because he actually loves the programming. I'm just the sore spot in all of it. But I really had to stop and think about what that meant, what it meant for my job, what it meant for the kinds of comments that I was going to feel comfortable making in the future. You kind of make a decision, right? Like, am I going to stick to my guns and stay true to myself and my personality and my facts, or am I going to kowtow to this? And I think it's quite clear. I'm going to stay me, and he's going to continue hating me.
Do you ever think about kind of the moment he had with Zoran, though? I've had this conversation with a million people. Like, if you could get into the Oval Office, because it is pretty easy to go, Mr. President, you're so fantastic, but I think you do a really great job on this. Like, I've had conversation with friends where it's like, do you think you could get Trump to pass Medicare for all if you could squeeze in a couple of compliments at the right time? Do you ever think about him watching the program and think like, how can I frame this to maybe actually change his mind? Because he does watch consistently.
Not to change his mind, but to get to a place where he thinks that I'm a valuable part of the conversation. I'm not really interested in, manipulating him or really even having that much interaction with him, even if it's, through the television screen. And my colleagues will always say, oh, if you met him, you'd love him. I have no interest. I'm sure that he is incredibly charming. Right. And I'm sure that I would have a very nice couple of minute conversation with him.
You met JD?
I didn't. Well, I sat next to JD for an hour, which was a lot. But he was very kind and very aware of the dynamics, which I didn't necessarily expect, that he would be so conscious of the fact that he was on the show that I'm a formal co-host of, because it was only, a month beforehand that Trump had called for me to be fired. So I was like, what kind of attitude is JD going to come in with? But when people say that about Trump, like, oh, you'd be so charmed, I'm just not interested in it. And I think it's a lot safer, frankly, to stay away from it. For Christmas, for instance, he customized Trump 2028 hats for me, and said something like, thank you for your great support. And I get it that it's funny for a cheap laugh. I happen to think that he will do everything in his power to be able to stick around as long as possible, and certainly if Steve Bannon gets his way. So I'm not really interested in palling around or playing nice. Now, on the Mamdani choice to do it, he got himself billions of dollars of investment in New York. That is worth a photo op, especially when he wasn't even smiling.
Give anything up. He didn't give anything up.
He didn't compromise his morals.
Nope.
He didn't compromise and go back on anything that he had said about the president, even said it to his face. And so maybe if I could go in and do that, but I would just look sour and sullen, and I'm not good at faking a smile, frankly.
Well, so you and Zoran are kind of in line there, where you're like, I know how to change minds. I know how to approach people, because he does it with the smile. Have you taken anything from him? Have you taken any notes from Zoran? Do you think Zoran's taken notes from you? Do you think he's paid attention to the show?
To the Five, maybe, or to just Fox coverage in general. No, I don't think. He's an incredibly talented politician. I don't think he needs any pointers from me on that. But I have learned a lot about the energy on the progressive left from Mamdani, for sure. And it's not just him, but the last couple of years, with the way the movement has taken shape, I have changed my opinion on healthcare, for instance. And now I'm just, going for it and saying, if you're going to have any chance at getting to decent coverage for everyone, you've got to talk in terms like Medicare for all, instead of saying, oh, we should have this public-private partnership, and it gets boring for people and they glaze over when you say, but the reality of the system is you won't be able to do X, Y, or Z thing. So I've gotten into my populist bag a little bit more. And, he excited so many people here. And so many people who I actually didn't expect to be taken with him for a whole host of reasons. And it makes me excited for younger people that they are feeling what we felt about Obama as elder millennials, right? Like that there was something to look forward to, or that politics could actually be responsive to the needs of the people and the current climate. And I get that the middle of the party, or the moderate wing of the party, it doesn't feel like that's happening all that often. There are some standouts, like a John Ossoff, for instance, who I already mentioned as our future president. But I do write about that in the book, too. I have a chapter called The Mamdani Bounce, and making politics fun again and winning elections with bold platforms that excite 18-year-olds and 65-year-olds.
Well, I wanted to get to that because I think that people have started to notice maybe there's a little less Mamdani coverage over at the network that you work for. What is the actual behind the scenes feeling about Zoran from, him winning the primary to now? Obviously, I think everyone recognizes that he is a very successful player. And I was the biggest Zoran guy. I'm like, this is the second coming. He has delivered, so he's proved out kind of my expectation. But what has it been behind the scenes of a guy like Jesse or Gutfeld or Dana? How are your colleagues feeling about their ability to kind of pretend that he's some boogeyman? Do they feel any? They certainly must feel differently than they did months ago.
No, I don't think so. I think that AOC has taken on a new wave of prominence. Again, I feel like we're talking about AOC more than we're necessarily talking about Mamdani, just because she's been all over the country rallying and she's so good. But no, I think that it's pretty consistent.
You don't think there's a little more Zoran fear? He's pretty popular.
No, I think that everybody knew that he was this talented and this good, and that he went from 1% to being able to get over 50% is a big feat. Even if Andrew Cuomo was as unappealing as he is, there was still a tremendous amount of money and a machine behind him. So I think there's still this game recognizes game moment. And I think, honestly, the most jarring thing was probably seeing how much Donald Trump enjoyed him, and that making everyone conscious of what a generational talent they were looking at. And I think it's under-discussed how much Kathy Hochul has helped Mamdani too in mainstreaming him, because a lot of Mamdani's deliverables had to be signed off on from Albany. And so Kathy Hochul, very smartly, someone who was, threats of being challenged from within the party and potentially a tough reelection. She only beat Lee Zeldin last time by a few points. She saw the writing on the wall and she said, I'm in, right? I want to appear at the rally, even though I'm going to come off as a dork compared to everybody else for the Queen's rally. And she said, universal childcare, here's the money for that. Pied-à-terre tax sounds good to me. And then drew the line where she couldn't go any further, right, on personal income tax, et cetera. So it's an interesting mashup, actually, of the center of the party and the left coming together to boost Mamdani's agenda, but also this kind of more populist view of what government should deliver for the people.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're not shy about, your political disposition as a raging moderate. Obviously, seem to be an Ossoff fan. Maybe another reason or two why that might be. He's a good-looking guy, and he's got a good background apparently. But who do you think that person is? Ossoff? He's had to take some tough votes. Like, I like the way that the senator is able to talk about corruption. He's taken some tough votes before. I don't know how much those are going to come up given the nature of his race. But do you think that John is the guy that people come behind? Do you think, Gavin Newsom has kind of a fight in him that maybe if he keeps moving will energize a little bit of the left? Where do you think that this partnership kind of lands of the raging moderate and the enraged leftist?
Well, what did you say that there's
that's us. We're a ticket, maybe.
We would be a large hair game ticket.
I was about to say,
since I have my Fox tease in. But you texted me that there's only one candidate that Hassan Piker and Jessica Tarlov are into, and it's Jon Ossoff, at least at this moment. Listen, I know that he's focused on his Senate race, which looks like it's going to be a rout. Mike Collins, I think, is especially a weak choice, and it would have been, if it were Brian Kemp, I don't know how it would be different. But I do think that he's going to be strongly considered for people. And he has figured out how to take those tough votes, like one in particular, the Lake and Riley Act sticks out because immigration and the future of immigration enforcement is going to be a big flashpoint in the 2028 primary. I think as a representative from Georgia, he can defend that vote. And he's also, for instance, voted against sending offensive weapons aid to Israel. And I think that people can look at that balance and say, it's okay for me to not necessarily agree with every vote that the person that I want to square off against JD Vance or Marco Rubio has taken. I think also, which is really good about him, like the stuff people aren't going to like, whether it's in the left or the middle, whatever it is, they don't really amplify. Like everyone is so taken with the way that he's laser focused on the corruption argument and the Epstein class. Like, I don't know how this guy woke up and, got that glow up and became so relentlessly on message, but you can't steer him off of it. And I think that's much to his benefit versus everyone else who gets caught talking about all this extraneous shit all the time.
Ossoff has got to be on a mix of like Adderall and like some like human growth hormone. Like, cause from a few years ago, he was, and obviously he's still a younger guy, but like
he's 39.
He's beefed out. He's beefed out, and then he's very focused. Not to say that he wasn't before, but the guy is.
It was a different person.
He's a different guy. He was a little thinner, which as a bit of a lanky guy, I was saying that there's nothing wrong with that. Does John scare your colleagues? I'm just interested in who like has.
That's all you want to know.
Fox. I just want to know
what Jesse says to me in the break.
I do.
Yes.
Besides weird comments about AOC's appearance, although that was gut felt
too.
No,
not as weird. Oh, today. Yeah, today. Earlier we did make some weird comments, or I didn't. My colleagues did. Ossoff definitely feels like a threat. I remember conversations about Wes Moore. It was NFL playoffs, and he was out tailgating outside of the Ravens stadium, and they were like, "Oh, okay, like that's a bro," because everything is also through the frame of masculinity, or whatever Jesse is drinking through the straw, eating the ice cream cones. Masculinity is.
What was that?
More.
What was that with JD Vance? The way that Joe Biden eats ice cream really turns me on. What was that about? You didn't have it? That was after
it was
JD
on Rogan.
Came on the show.
Yeah, I think it would have come up if he had been on the 5 after that. But there were so many bizarre comments that he made to Rogan, and also just admitting how poorly his own administration has handled the Epstein files was probably my favorite. I don't know what the ice cream thing is. He's not naturally funny.
No. And so is that something that you thought about? Obviously, I want to say again, the book is a great way to kind of figure out how you go into your prep for the day and how to go out and make these arguments. But we talked about this a little bit after you were with Vance. He was on the episode. What is that like? Like, how much of that component is you just kind of bigging yourself up? Because obviously you're an incredible debater. You've been doing this a long time. But Vice President of the United States sitting next to you got to maintain a level of professionalism. What is the mental versus like the actual? Just like I got my data points ready.
So I actually admitted on air before I started talking, and the first topic was about the war in Iran, and it was the week of the MOU. When it got leaked out, and the administration was telling us that it wasn't the MOU. And it actually really helped me to say out loud to the audience that I've been psyching myself up all day for this, and like, here we go. And I really love the viewers to be able to come on that journey with me, because I think it also helps for the ones who don't have my politics. And we actually have a lot of Democrats and independents that watch, 20% Democrats, 30% independents.
I watch.
Yeah, exactly. And there's rage watching and love watching and curiosity watching. But I think it helps make you feel like part of their world more if you're expressing all the things that are going through your body and your mind. So I admitted my nerves, which made me feel a lot better. And I do a ton of prep, and that is going on through the course of the whole day from when we get the rundown at 11 a.m. for the 5 p.m. show. But I knew that I had to be polite and reverential. So it's second in line to the presidency sitting next to you. But that if I missed my opportunity to push back against the lies, frankly, coming out of the administration about the war and the MOU in particular, that I would look back on that day and really regret it. It's different than just talking to my regular colleagues where I'm going to be back the next day and I could say, like, actually, yesterday in the B block, I should have told you that was a massive lie. Or like yesterday, I told Jesse, you're embarrassing yourself. I could do that any day, but I can't say it to the Vice President of the United States of America. So I knew I needed to shoot my shot. One thing that I did take stock of is how many like little snide comments I could get in before I became rude. And
you had the ballroom one in, right?
I got the ballroom. I got that he's changed his mind about Trump, since Trump used to be America's Hitler, and now apparently he's the second coming. But the one that gave me the most joy, and the newsroom at the Wall Street Journal, was when he said, the Iranian propaganda that Jessica's been reading, and I went, like the Wall Street Journal, and that just felt real good, where I was like supporting good journalism and telling the truth, and was able to get it in. And then I smiled big, and he smiled big. And I think he knew that I had checkmated him.
Didn't he throw a commercial break during some part of it? Then he's like, we're gonna go to commercial. That's gonna feel really good.
We did have to go to commercial break, but
still, you don't always have to go to commercial break.
No, you do.
You do. You got to pay the bills.
The red light goes, we have to pay the bills.
And JD Vance is like, I understand that the most important thing that you have to do at work is make sure money is made, because that's what Donald Trump does all day. So he's like, I do understand this phenomenon. Wow.
Yes. And because we are capitalists and we are a capitalist country,
Some people are.
There's space for some democratic socialist policies.
Some people have capital. JD sure's got a lot of it. He's getting some from Donald Trump. I kept asking about the behind the scenes. I want to talk about the book a little bit more, but I have one more behind the scenes question, and I do have to let you go because I can't keep you forever. You got to go fight with Jesse Waters. What is I know it's the behind the scenes. Everyone's so interested. It's why I do have to ask. What is the Trump scandal, Trump failure that is recognized as, okay, this may be a problem? Because the Fox polling is really good, and you always say this.
For
the Fox polling.
Oh, the quality.
The quality is really good.
Yeah.
So when it comes back and says, well, these are the issues that matter, obviously, affordability, you can really trust it. You talk about it on the show. It's not like, Ipsos, and it's like, oh, we'll just ignore that, whatever. Although still also very good polling. When the polling comes back, I'm sure there's we're going to brush this off. But what doesn't get brushed off kind of around the water cooler in terms of what this administration is doing that they're worried about having an impact?
Well, I think it's definitely the war in Iran. And it's not even behind the scenes. It's being openly discussed. And I spend a lot of time paying attention to conservative criticism of the president, because I think that it also makes it safer for people who disagree with me to hear if I say, no, actually someone who votes the same way as you or someone who you look up to has X, Y, or Z problem with what's going on. And there are a bevy of conservatives, from the commentating space to those serving in Congress, who have been very forthcoming about the problems with this war and the lies that the administration has told, the shifting the goalposts on what the objectives are going to be, and then just straight up cost of living problems. Donald Trump gets on TV and says, well, I don't care about the midterms. Well, guess what? Everybody else with their name on the ballot cares about the midterms. And Democrats, hopefully, when we do get back into power, I'm hopeful certainly about the House, glimmer of hopes for the Senate. Like, we better do shit. We better hold people accountable and pass legislation that's going to meaningfully improve people's lives. And I think that whether they use they're going to impeach again, and it's going to be oversight is going to be the busiest committee or whatever, like, bring it all on. And so I think there's real fear about that. But they say it out loud. This isn't, so maybe they've started diminishing the water cooler stuff. But
no, they've started to, and I think you're probably sharing that there is that still fear that persists behind the scenes. You talk about us needing to win the midterms. Obviously, I think people are looking at the key races right now: Georgia, Texas, but then looking ahead to 2028. Of course, there will be a need to win over those independent and conservative voters. I think we need to get people off the couch as well as a Democratic Party. But if you're talking to, let's put a scenario together. Tomorrow or later today, why not? James Tallarico gives you a call and said, Jessica, I saw the book. The cover is great. I really like the white suit. It's very cool. You should wear that on the 5. I think you have. And he's talking in a Southern accent. He's like, Jessica, now I sound like Bill Clinton. But he's like, I'm busy. I'm on the campaign trail. I don't really have that much time to read it. Distill down how I need to communicate to voters who maybe aren't buying my campaign right away. What are you telling James Tallarico?
I'm telling James Tallarico to make people, no matter their politics, feel like he is not going to overthrow their lives or upset the apple cart more than they would be comfortable with. That the things that he's focused on are in line with Texas values. And he's done this, like what his policy on the border, for instance, his policy on oil. So James Tallarico understands the mission. And I think that people want to hear that there is a way to make meaningful change without changing their lives more than they're comfortable with. And that pendulum changes depending who you're talking to, right? Like, there are obviously people who are desperate for a complete overhaul of their quality of life.
I like overhauls.
Yeah, but then there are folks that are conservative leaning moderates or never Trump Republicans, or even people who just are looking at their choices and saying, are you kidding me that I have to pick Ken Paxton over someone who actually has a moral compass and is a decent human being? So I think making people feel safe, frankly, with your leadership is the number one thing that he has to do. And keep talking about having, a bold agenda that's going to make life better for Texans, like more money in your pocket, good, decent healthcare coverage, treating people with respect, and instilling actual Christian values, because this administration is a total corruption of what we see in the Bible. So that's what I would do.
Well, Donald Trump didn't know how to hold it, and then he got mad at you for that. So I think we've been doing this for a while. I appreciate you joining me. It's been a long time coming. I've popped on your show a couple of times, but I have to give you the plug, because you always plug my show when I'm on with you. So where can the people get the book, and final elevator pitch on why they should read it?
So we'll put the link to pre-order in the show notes. It'll
be everywhere.
September.
Aaron and I plugged it last week. So.
I know, it was so sweet. I love you guys. And
so QR code's going to go right here.
QR code here or here. You should buy the book if you have ever wondered how I do it, if I really have the patience of a saint, if you think I'm doing the Lord's work, if you think that you would have punched one of my colleagues and are wondering how I haven't. If you enjoy the clips, the show, whatever it is, if you use me for free content, then
is that a shot at me?
No, because you're having me on your show to plug my book. But clips of me have flown around, and if you have enjoyed them, then get the full story and get to know me better and how I became a person that does this for a living, and hopefully, someone that you view as a person that does this effectively. And it has my future plans for the party in it too, and an agenda for the Democrats moving forward that really brings that big tent to life, where we can have Medicare for all and a decent immigration policy too. So
you're going to want to see it.
Is that a good plug?
It's a great plug.
I haven't really been doing it yet.
You have to.
I'm just starting to plug.
And you also reminded me.
But
you also reminded me, speaking of the clips, we got to shout out Asen, who's always getting the clips out of you.
Oh, he is great.
So much love. He's going to get a free copy.
Definitely signed. And you can pre-order signed copies. And I'm going to tour. I have a New York event, a DC event, San Diego, Massachusetts.
I'm hosting the DC event, right?
Totally. We'll talk about that.
We'll talk about that later. Jessica, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having me.
Always so fantastic to be joined by friend of the show, Jessica Tarlov. A lot of good behind the scenes information on what's going on at Fox. And of course, if you want more of it, I do really recommend that you go out and get Jessica's book. It is a fantastic read also. She puts up with enough. Let's do Jessica a favor. And speaking of a favor has been done to us, those calling for Donald Trump and his family being held accountable by a congresswoman who is actually acting on it. A rising star in the Democratic Party, Yassamin Ansari, joins us next.
Congresswoman Yassamin Ansari, thank you so much for joining me on Sunday.
Thanks for having me.
And I also want to say thank you for the big announcement that you made earlier this week, not just with regards to Andrew Tate, but also Barron Trump, that has had the internet a buzz. You spoke earlier in the week about Andrew Tate, who is a disgusting sex criminal, appearing on the Hill, and in fact, even talking with a Republican member of Congress. But before we can get to the news you broke on Barron Trump and his relationship with Andrew Tate, can you inform the audience a little bit about who this Andrew Tate guy is, who his brother Tristan is, and why they're so important kind of to the Trump movement and the manosphere more broadly?
Absolutely. So I reluctantly came to know who Andrew and Tristan Tate were about 5 years ago. I had obviously heard of them. They are big figures in the so-called manosphere and really espouse this really toxic form of masculinity and have a lot of influence when it comes to young men. But I was actually on a family trip with some younger cousins of mine at the time. I think they were like 13, 14 years old. And I had always known Andrew Tate as somebody who was awful, right? A criminal, somebody who rapes women, was accused credibly of child sex trafficking, etc. And then I heard younger family members of mine, teenagers, talk about him. And they were kind of quoting him and talking about this platform that he has called Hustlers University, where he basically was trying to teach, it was really targeted towards teenagers and young men, boys. And the claim was that they would, teach them how to make money outside of traditional ways And it ended up being a massive pyramid scheme that Andrew Tate was making a bunch of money off of. But I was really alarmed when I realized that, wow, like the influence that these criminals are having on really smart, well-meaning young guys, it really terrified me. And that's when I started to really do more research on just the influence that they have, but also the broader manosphere that they are a part of. And, since then, we have seen Andrew and Tristan Tate come out in full force for the Trump administration. They have publicly supported Donald Trump and encouraged their followers to support Donald Trump. They're very close to people in Trump's orbit, as well as Trump family members. Don Jr. in particular has publicly supported Andrew Tate and has actually criticized the Romanian government for the charges that they have against them. And Barron Trump as well is known to have had communications with the Tate brothers. And there are a lot of connections here. They are very close with people in Trump's orbit. There was some really good reporting done by the New York Times and Financial Times and others where they uncovered a text that Andrew Tate had sent essentially saying, we should be good. The Trump White House has assured me this. So there is a lot to be investigated there. This is an administration that has never shied away from colluding with criminals, from protecting predators and pedophiles. And so this is the latest example of that, and one that I believe needs to be investigated fully.
And so to add a little bit more context for those who have not been following this story, the Tates were arrested in Romania. There was a travel ban on them. But after Donald Trump won the 2024 election, it was lifted. They started traveling the world. They came to the United States and have several times. But the reporting that you're referencing cites Barron Trump as one of the key players in their eventual release, allowing these sex criminals to come to the United States. Can you tell us more about how you are responding to that in the letter you just sent to James Comer, the chair of the Oversight Committee?
So I serve on the Oversight Committee, which is, of course, where the Epstein investigation has been ongoing. That is, arguably the largest criminal enterprise and child sex trafficking operation of our time. I believe very seriously that the Oversight Committee needs to be investigating all forms of corruption at the hands of the Trump administration. And this is a glaring example of that. And so I wrote to the chairman of the committee, James Comer, who has been, kind of dragging his feet a little, I believe, on Epstein, but asking him to open an investigation into the various ties and connections between the Tate brothers and Trump's orbit. That includes Trump's two sons, Donald Trump Jr. and Barron Trump. That also includes people like the special envoy, Richard Grenell, who is reported to have not only publicly supported the Tate brothers, but has, spoken to Romanian officials when he was at the Munich Security Conference, talking to them about their case. Why is a U.S. government official, while at the Munich Security Conference, which is quite literally the most prominent national security conference and gathering of world leaders, talking about the Tate brothers case with the official there? And we know that, then they were allowed to have come to the United States from Romania, which is another reason we have so many questions. I believe this is worthy of a congressional investigation. That is what our job is on the Oversight Committee, to investigate collusion and corruption. And especially in this case, I think when you're looking at such serious criminals like the Tate brothers who have been roaming around in the United States committing more crimes, we need to be asking why.
So to be clear, you want to see Barron Trump come before Congress and answer questions about his relationship with Andrew Tate?
I absolutely want to see Barron Trump come before Congress and answer questions about this. I mean, there is, reporting about this, and he should answer these questions. What is his relationship? What kind of communication have they had? What kinds of connections has Barron Trump potentially made for Andrew Tate and his brother? Has he had any conversations with other White House officials about this? These are all really important questions to be asking. Barron Trump has also, there's more reporting about him as it pertains to financial dealings and corruption. And this is not the only issue that I think Barron Trump needs to come before Congress for, but the Oversight Committee is really primed to be the place for him to answer questions. And I think it's important to remember that Barron Trump is an adult. He is a 19-year-old, I believe, maybe 20 years old now. He is, somebody who is deeply involved in Trump's orbit and this whole manosphere, and he has a lot of influence. And so he needs to be held accountable if he has committed any wrongdoing.
I'm glad you made that specific point, because I feel like Donald Trump's sons and daughters, I guess. Everyone forgets about Tiffany. Poor Tiffany. I don't know if I have a lot of sympathy for her, but they always talk about, broadly in the media, these individuals as Donald Trump's kids or his children, like they're not adults. So obviously calling Barron Trump to come before Congress has caught you a lot of flack, people saying he's just a kid, or, this is an attack on the president's family. That's not my position. How do you respond to those claims?
Look at the deep involvement of all of the Trump family members in the administration and in the results of, the administration's agenda. They are all very much locked in, and they are active players in everything that goes on and all of the policy that's underway. We've long known this, of course, with Ivanka playing a very significant role during the first Trump administration. Her husband, Jared Kushner, to this day, even though he doesn't have any sort of real title, is negotiating on behalf of the U.S. government with countries in the Middle East, with Qatar, with the UAE. He's working on this alleged Iran deal as we speak. And so this is not a new thing. So they can't be looked at just, the Trump children with their own personal lives and people who are trying to stay away from the spotlight. They're very much a part of it. Don Jr., Eric Trump, and now Barron, who is an adult now, I think is following in the same footsteps of his older siblings and is not only profiting off of the administration's policies and the self-dealing and the corruption, but he is actively using his influence, this case being one example of that, to change policy by the White House.
James Comer has not been very responsive in a lot of the Epstein investigation. Do you expect him to be responsive here?
My expectation, and I hope that I'm wrong, is to get some sort of a dismissive response from James Comer. He often tries to dismiss, very egregious issues out of the White House. I think he has been dragging his feet when it comes to Epstein. For example, we have been working really hard to get Todd Blanche before the committee because he's been at the center of the Epstein files cover up. And James Comer, just this week said, yes, we also would like to have Todd Blanche here, but only after he is confirmed as the Attorney General of the United States. There's always a caveat with Comer, and I think he's very overwhelmed. I think I don't think that he has a lot of support from the members on the committee in his leadership. And so I imagine he's going to try to push this off and ignore it. And we know they're not going to be in the majority come January. And so it's something that we will be able to really advance when Democrats are back in power.
So do you plan to keep this pressure on when Democrats are back in power and continue to push to bring Barron before Congress?
I think this case more broadly is extremely important. Barron is one piece of it, but the overall issue, which is that there very clearly seems to have been, again, based on very credible reporting, coordination and discussion around the Tate brothers and intervention in certain key moments throughout the years since Trump became president again. That is worthy of investigation. It is something that we need to be looking at. The Judiciary Committee has also been looking into this back in early 2025. They sent a letter to Secretary of State Marco Rubio asking very specific questions about what sort of involvement the United States had with Romanian officials to get them to back off and to allow, to urge the Romanian government to allow the Tate brothers to travel, which ultimately led them to the United States. So I hope to collaborate between the Oversight Committee and the Judiciary Committee. This is deeply concerning. These are two monsters. I mean, the Tate brothers are, I think that in the UK, they have a combined 50 charges against them. So we're talking about everything from rape to child sex trafficking to exploitation of women and minors. This is very serious, and we need to be very aggressive in the new Congress to make sure we do not allow this to continue.
Do you think this is a tone-setting moment then? Is this something that you're thinking about in the context of that new Congress in which Democrats will really have to push on this Trump regime, on the Republicans in Congress who allow them to get away with this? It's a time for us to have more grit. Is this just an individual moment looking into an individual case, or would you like this to be kind of a bigger tone-setting moment?
Look, I think the tone-setting moment more broadly is tackling the corruption of this administration and going after the Trump regime hard. I mean, there is so much happening, and every single day in broad daylight before our eyes, they are stealing from us. They are protecting pedophiles. They are protecting, criminals in every way, shape, or form. This is a big piece of it, but it is going to be part of a broader corruption tackling agenda where we go after, the crooks and the criminals, and we make it very clear that the days of getting away with bullshit and getting away with your crimes are far over.
Yeah. And it's not just the sex crimes, although there are lots of them in this administration. It's the financial crime as well. There's a story about Don Jr. that I want to talk about, but not to get into personalities. Oh, no, I think it's okay. Have you ever heard Don Jr. speak or share a tweet and thought, that's a smart guy? Has there ever been a moment that you really just revered the intelligence of Don Jr.?
I can't say there has been. I don't follow him that closely, but
you've never gone like, wow, he's really on it. No, nothing like that.
No.
Because there's new reporting about his venture capital firm, 1789 Capital. It is now posting in its first few years a 200% return, which beats most firm of similar kinds. And that's why I wanted to ask you, because do you think this is like investing whiz Don Jr. finally finding his calling, or is this more corruption?
Don Jr. has used every minute of this Trump 2.0 term to make himself as rich as possible. That is his goal. His dad is helping him with that. They are all in on this. It has been so disgusting and so shameful to see what's happening again right before our eyes. This venture capital firm that he's a partner in, there have been a number of examples. I think the most appalling is a recent one. When the venture capital firm invested in, I think, a rare earth mining company of sorts. And then shortly after that, the Pentagon provided a $620 million loan to this company. And then it was reported that there was a senior White House official, Mr. Navarro, who personally intervened. He's actually a close friend of Don Jr.'s, unsurprisingly. And he personally intervened to make sure that this loan went out from the Pentagon and that this company was prioritized. And that story is not unique at all. There have been, from drone companies to these mining companies to crypto schemes where the Trump kids, and in particular Donald Trump Jr., has been at the forefront through, his venture capital firm, making those investments, and then suddenly contracts are given out from the U.S. federal government. It is so disgusting. I think if you look at the broader, the context that we're in right now with this illegal war in Iran, there is no doubt in my mind that much of this war is about profiting for the Trump family, for Trump's orbit. A few people are making a lot of money, and at the expense of our economy in the U.S. and the global economy. Now 18 U.S. service members have been killed. Thousands of Iranian civilians have been killed. Meanwhile, Donald Trump Jr., he's making billions of dollars.
And you said his dad is backing him, not just privately with Peter Navarro in government contracts, but he's also outwardly promoting it. You brought up that $620 million deal, that loan that Donald Trump Jr. and his company received. It wasn't just for rare earths. Specifically, it was for magnets. And Donald Trump recently, in a speech, said this, and I'm gonna apologize because I'm gonna do Donald Trump's voice here because it's the only way to articulate it. He was at a speech and he said, and I quote, "Quite frankly, I hope you're going to do magnets. Somebody out there, I hope you're all brilliant people. Magnets, do magnets, okay? I'll tell you how to make money. Do magnets." So do magnets. Pretty blatant, huh?
They don't hide it. They've never tried to hide it. They know that they can get away with this right now. They have Republicans in Congress who do not do anything to hold them accountable. I mean, we have the most complicit Congress right now with Mike Johnson, who is so beyond useless. He is complicit and enabled all of this corruption, all of this authoritarianism. And he does. I mean, Trump says all of this in broad daylight because he knows nobody's going to stop him. But that's why I believe as Democrats, we have to be so clear that when we do take power, we're not just going to forget about all of this. We're not just going to restore normalcy and go back to the way things were. And, it's all good, especially when we have a new president. No, we have to have the stamina and the political will to hold these criminals accountable for the crimes that they have committed, because as a result of their crimes, so many people have been harmed, so many people have died, so many people have lost their livelihoods. It's not just that they're getting rich and nobody else is feeling the impacts. The vast majority of the rest of the country and Americans are feeling the devastating impacts of what this corruption means.
Yeah, and it's so tied within this very small group of people that you mentioned. I think it is aptly termed at this point the Epstein class. I want to close there. Are there more updates that we should know on the case, or what are you hearing behind the scenes that maybe you wish the media was focusing on and reporting on a little bit more? We know that Donald Trump is always coming up with distractions to move the attention of the press. What would you like them to be focusing on more with regards to the Epstein case?
Well, I definitely think that Trump used the war to distract people from the Epstein files. And so there's no question that unfortunately it is not getting nearly as much coverage as it was, a couple of months ago. Back in February, I think was really the peak of it. But look, what Americans should know is that we have been moving full speed ahead on this investigation. We've had dozens of transcribed interviews where we have had people like Bill Gates. We've had people like Epstein's lawyers and accountants, Richard Kahn and Darren Indyke. We've had the women who worked with Epstein, who scheduled all of the massage appointments. We are gathering a lot of important information, seeing clear discrepancies between what these individuals are telling us behind closed doors and what the truth is and what we know to be fact with evidence that we have in the Epstein files. So we are very much preparing for the moment when we are back in the majority to subpoena many of these people again, to have them under oath in front of the American people where they cannot hide, behind closed doors. And we will be preparing the criminal referrals necessary for a Department of Justice that's going to prioritize this in 2028 and beyond.
Absolutely. And on the DOJ, just a closing question. What is your message to Republicans in the Senate and Democrats who need to be pushing back against Todd Blanche's confirmation?
I think that confirming Todd Blanche would be the biggest mistake we could make. First and foremost, because Todd Blanche was Donald Trump's lawyer. In fact, he's still Donald Trump's lawyer. He still refers to himself as Donald Trump's attorney. That's unacceptable. The Department of Justice is supposed to be separate from the president's office. It's supposed to be, independent and seeking justice for the American people. And to have Donald Trump's henchman at the helm of it, somebody who we know has doxed survivors in purposefully messing up the release of the Epstein files and trying to silence survivors in that way, somebody who has been at the forefront of trying to create this slush fund to pay out January 6th insurrectionists. This is, somebody who is corrupt to at his core, and he should not be the Attorney General of the United States. I think Republicans in particular need to grow a spine. They all voted to release the Epstein files, and Todd Blanche has messed that up at every turn. And they listen to the survivors. The survivors themselves have been very clear that they are highly concerned with Todd Blanche being appointed AG. And they met with him and they were gravely disappointed at his lack of care and his lack of prioritization of this issue and how callous he is, quite frankly, at the end of the day. So I would be, I think his appointment would be the biggest mistake that the Senate could make.
You said it recently. He belongs in jail. I completely agree. And I really appreciate you setting the tone for other Democrats who need to be fighting this Trump administration. Congresswoman Ansari, thank you so much for joining me on Sunday.
That is what I am talking about in terms of a tone-setting moment that we desperately need right now. Many, many thanks to the Congresswoman, and I am excited to see Barron have to testify. That's going to be great, and I'm hoping that the rest of his siblings will as well, because this is an entire criminal family, and we have to make sure that before we get to a midterms in which we need to make sure that the people elected are actually going to fight Donald Trump. We have the opportunity to do that in some primaries right now. And that's why I'm excited to be bringing in someone who I have been a fan of for so long. And we're going to talk about all things Democratic Party and much, much more. That's Krystal Ball of the incredible show Breaking Points. I'm excited that she's joining me now.
Krystal Ball, thank you so much for joining me on Sunday.
It is an absolute pleasure.
Well, I'm excited to chat with you because we had a little bit of good news this week, which is not always what we expect. But Zohran Mamdani was out with a video announcement after a couple of questions all week in a temper tantrum from Donald Trump on Truth Social about plans to arrest Benjamin Netanyahu. This video right now, I think, has like 10 million likes across platforms. Aside from it being really great communications, what did you make of the response that the mayor has gotten on this announcement, even though he will not be able to go forward with what was a campaign promise that we were all really hoping he was going to be able to deliver on?
Yeah, well, I look at it on a couple of levels. I mean, first of all, I think just on the moral leadership level, which is the most important, you know, how extraordinary to have someone who wants to hold true to international law, who wants to uphold human rights for everyone on the planet without weird carve-outs for a particular ethno-state, and who is very vocally transparent about what his aims are and what the limitations are of the law. So I thought it was a really stunning example of moral leadership. And then on the politics part, you just have to admire someone who, in a way, he's announcing that he is not going to be able to follow through on something that he had pledged to do on the campaign trail. And yet, because he does it with such incredible integrity, and also, while, you know, clearly explaining himself to the public, he gets nothing but applause from people who, you know, like myself, would love to see Benjamin Netanyahu arrested. So I thought it was extraordinary, both on a moral and a political level.
It's interesting because, you know, there will be so many Democrats who see Zohran say, unfortunately, because of the legal limitations, and I've spoken with my office and my legal team, and I've done as much as possible, I'm not going to be able to deliver. And I know there are a lot of Democrats on the Hill who are upset that he gets applause for that and will say, oh, if I ever said that I can't deliver on something, you people would be at my throat. But it's because of the worldview that he has that I seek to follow the law and protect human rights and dignity. Why do you think after all this time, and of course the corporate money is at play, kind of the I'm just stuck in my ways is at play. But why do you think that there are so many Democrats who still don't understand that it's about having a worldview and that like authenticity isn't just a word that comes from like nice social media content?
Well, and it's also credibility, right? Here's a guy who did make a lot of campaign promises and has just been surgically following through on them, whether it's the buses, the grocery store, the childcare, the rent freeze, and going beyond even what he promised on the campaign trail. So when you have a guy who has a track record of taking very seriously his own pledges, coming to you and saying, guys, on this one, I've explored every avenue. We just can't do it. Well, of course, people are going to, are going to give him some grace. They're going to appreciate just the transparency of the process and his desire to, uphold the worldview that he has. So I think that credibility is really what the many in the Democratic Party leadership are lacking, because what we're used to from them is either they don't bother to make any promises at all, or there's a lot of excuse making about, oh, well, we can't get around to indicting Donald Trump in time to get him out of, the White House and make sure he can never return to the White House. Oh, well, we tried to constrain Netanyahu, but it was just really hard. Or, oh, we wanted to raise the minimum wage, but the parliamentarians said no. There's so much excuse making that, if they come to you with another like, gee, we'd like to do that, but here's XYZ reason why. That just feels like a pattern of always finding a reason why you can't do anything. Whereas for Zohran, this is an outlier. This is a break from the norm of him being able to truly use the power of his office to follow through on his promises that he's made.
And it's building him more credibility and political capital, which is why you see so many of the 2028 contenders reaching out right now. Obviously, Kamala Harris was reported on the conversation that they had, but I spoke to Governor Newsom a few weeks ago, and he said that he's admired what he's seen from a lot of these insurgent, DSA candidates winning primaries, that, he's been speaking regularly with Zoran. You believe this will come up as this is going to be kind of a 2028. I hate the word litmus test. We got to find something other than litmus test. But do you think arresting Netanyahu is going to have a big role in this kind of early foreign policy discussion of who's has the ability to be a front runner or not?
I do. I mean, I think it's part of maybe if you don't like the term litmus test, we could call it a moral red line where people look at, okay, are you willing to actually uphold human rights? Are you willing to break with a lot of big moneyed interests that are pushing in the opposite direction? Are you willing to represent what not just the overwhelming majority of the Democratic base, but a majority of Americans want to see with regard to a relationship with Israel? Are you willing to do that in a way that may make you unpopular in the cocktail parties, in a way that may make you unpopular with a lot of the donor class? And so I think it becomes about so much more than quote unquote just our relationship with Israel. It becomes about how you're going to conduct business, who you're going to fight for, and who you're willing to stand up against when you're in office. And so I think that's why it's become such an important line that Democratic primary candidates, have drawn, and that the voters themselves have really drawn. It's why, all this like panic about Hassan Piker has only actually served the interest of pushing this forward, because it's made it yet another very clear, okay, which side are you on? Which type of candidate are you going to be? And obviously that has spillover effects to, are you going to fight Trump? Are you going to fight back against the rise of fascism in the Republican Party? Are you going to push back on big pharma? Are you going to actually deliver for working people in the way that you claim?
And I was talking to Hassan earlier this week, given all the Andrew Tate stuff of it all, and you talk about like the ridiculous outrage against Hassan, and he was just kind of joking about the fact that Fox tried to compare him, and it's like Fox, like Jesse Waters, really like Jesse Waters, that guy is going to talk about who is more like Andrew Tate. This is the guy who like slashed the tires of his producer to like try to give her a ride home. But he was laughing at the fact that they were making this comparison. These people are disgusting criminals with relation to the Trump administration via Barron. We talked with Congresswoman Ansari about that earlier in the show. Do you think that like Donald Trump ran a campaign in which he said that all the Democrats are going to let a bunch of, sex criminal foreigners in, and then that's exactly what he did, and now they're being extradited. Do you think this is something that people should talk about more? Obviously, yes. Andrew Tate is someone who's in the culture. How do you think this argument should be made, aside from like, what the fuck are they doing?
I mean, it's crazy. Look, we have at this point the text message and the information, like he was close to the Trump regime, including, not just Barron, but Alina Habba was praising him.
Close to Barron. Like, what are we doing?
I know it's insane, right? And, and members of the Trump administration were part of his legal team. Like the ties are very direct, and it very much looks like they intervened in Romania to get them, released so that they could travel the world and come to the United States. You can only imagine this guy's being charged with sex trafficking, with rape, with possession of CSAM, child abuse material, and we're, not hearing hardly anything out of the media and certainly out of Democratic leadership about this. It's crazy. You can imagine if the shoe was on the other foot, they would never let it go. And so sometimes we need to learn something from the hard-nosed tactics of the right, because they will take a story and they will dig into it and they will be relentless. Sometimes we're lacking that like killer instinct.
And it's literally the thing that Trump said that he would not allow to happen, or that he would stop Democrats from Britain. And he is a sex criminal coming into the country because Donald Trump and his son allowed it. And the fact that Barron is getting involved with this, like, I'm glad to see that the Congresswoman is like, I'm going to call out Barron directly, because there is going to be, and I really feel it with the Lindsey Graham and the Mitch McConnell of it all, there is going to be such a reluctance on talking about the Trump family. And I just know that there's going to be some kind of centristy, squishy Dem going, we don't really want to go after the kids. I'm like, kids, these people are adults. What are you talking about? They're 40 years old and they have government contracts. These are not children. Are you sharing the same concern right now? I'm sure you are.
It's kind of the way I felt about the Erica Kirk situation. It's like, it's one thing if she's just positioning herself as a grieving widow. She's not. She's taking control of a very consequential political organization and deciding to participate in the political arena. Guess what? You're fair game now. Same with Barron. right? Barron's not a child anymore. Barron is an adult, and he has decided that he wants to directly participate in his father's corrupt political project. Okay, then we get to critique that. Like, you don't get a carve out just because you happen to be blood related. So absolutely not. And, you know, going back to the Andrew Tate thing, like, just think of the specter of this. Donald Trump all over the Epstein files, running the largest cover up of the Epstein class criminal, sex criminal affiliate ring, elite affiliate ring. And then to top that all off, you know, helping to smooth the legal woes of Andrew Tate and his brother, both accused, alleged sex criminals. Like, you put it all together, it paints a very disturbing and toxic picture.
And it also goes to show what kind of narrative they want shaped in the media if they're advocating for these guys, if they're, you know, sticking their neck out to make sure that these people can travel and have more power and meet with other people in like the quote unquote manosphere to push this idea. That I saw Andrew Tate clips where it was like, oh, you know, I think Epstein was pretty cool. The island was pretty sick. And a lot of this stuff is kind of like the shock jock. And I think there is the lesson to be learned from, you know, these people who are ridiculous, but kind of make a joke of it, are so important in shifting the culture. And it just seems like, you know, you can only have so many expectations of the Democratic Party at this point, but it really found no counter to that. I guess it's the entirely the job of independent media and progressives and culture and commentary and so on and such. But do you see anyone, I don't want to give like the direct one-to-one comparison, but who is kind of playing that role of the, I hate to call it like the Joe Rogan of the left type of thing, but who's been that person or that figure to you as of recently?
Maybe my husband.
I was hoping that's what you were going to say. I was trying to set you up there. So dark woke. Let's talk about it.
Kyle does not hold back. I mean, this is one of the things I love about Kyle, but I think what everybody loves about Kyle is just like there is no beating around the bush. I can't help but sometimes like couch things in diplomatic language. It's just the way that I'm wired. Man, there is none of that with him. And so I think we need that. And Hassan, I think, has become incredibly actually politically important. He's really gone out on a limb this electoral cycle and said, look, I'm going to put my credibility on the line. I'm going to go campaign for these candidates who want to have me there and whose values I share. I think it's ended up being, you know, Zoran has rightly gotten a lot of credit for the movement he's built and the way he's been able to spend his political capital, move candidates forward. I think Hassan has been very important in that too. So, you know, I do see a lot of really important new voices in the media ecosystem. Not that Kyle or Hassan are that new to the media ecosystem, but in terms of their importance. And then, you know, I think you've been very important. I think Jennifer Welsh, we were talking about her. I think the demographic audience that she reaches and the way that she frames issues has really been, you know, I think has been very consequential. And then the bringing together of these worlds also is something that's a little bit different from some of the eras of independent media that I've participated in, where you've had creators that are at their throats, very siloed. Now I see, not to say that it's as 100%, but I see a lot of desire to collaborate and build bridges and work together collectively. And that is so incredibly necessary.
Yeah, and the same is true in like the leveraging of the power. You just had Rep. Adam Smith on your show, and that went a little viral because he was maybe a little more argumentative than you would expect of someone who you were kind of bringing in to have a conversation about, you know, a change of heart, a policy change that he was making. When you're in those moments, and you've had plenty of examples. The Slotkin one might be my favorite. The line, you know, you're a senator, don't play powerless, is something that I have gone back to the well on a million times. But when you're in that moment, do you have any expectation once they start getting antagonistic that they'll just like, I don't want to say like turn it off for the cameras, but maybe just like because they're it was going to be a very public and embarrassing segment if they continue with it, that maybe they'll catch themselves? Or do you just see these people often as just like too inside their own head?
I think they're too inside their own little bubbles. You know, I mean, these are like with Adam Smith. This man was literally in office when ICE was created. That's how long he's been there, right? He was there to vote for that. And so I think it's very easy to live an insular life when you're in DC. You've got staffers that are taking care of a lot of your needs. A lot of your interactions are more with, you know, donors. I mean, that's the reality of our political campaign system, which is disgusting, which needs to be changed. And so you're getting this very skewed view of the world. And then you also have all of this bias towards wanting to justify the positions that you've held for years and years and years. And because people tend to treat you so deferentially too, you also tend to develop a very big ego. You probably had one to start with to decide to run for office. And all of those things argue against truly opening your eyes and reconsidering what you're seeing in front of you. So, my goal with Adam Smith is I wanted to know if there was a genuine shift happening for him, because there is a genuine shift happening for a lot of people. And I'm very open to that. I've changed, I hope everybody is learning and growing and adjusting with facts and reality. So we have to hold a space for that. And I wanted to know some of these new votes he's taken against Israel that led to AIPAC cutting him off. Is this a new direction, or are you just trying to sort of CYA, given what you see in the polling and the rise of, pro-human rights sentiment in the Democratic base and wanting to see moral consistency there? And my takeaway, people can watch the interview and judge for themselves, is that his ideology has not changed at all. He's taken these votes because he felt it was politically necessary. He's got a lefty challenger in his own primary. He can read a poll, et cetera. But he would argue almost against the positions reflected in his votes with me, which was part of what was confusing. And just to give one really quick example, he co-authored an Abolish ICE bill with Pramila Jayapal. And he wrote that, right? And so I'm like, okay, well, do you still support it? And he wanted to, because I agree. And I think his view of we're going to get rid of ICE, we'll put it back in the Justice Department. That's my view as well. So let's talk about that. But he wanted to fight me on it, even though in theory we shared the position. It was very confusing to me. So I think he has taken some strategic progressive positions because he thought it was politically necessary. In terms of his own ideology, though, I don't think that's where he stands. At least that's what I got from the interview.
Well, that was something that stuck out to me. And then there was another moment, but that one in particular, I kind of find to be this type of thing that I refer to as playing with dolls, because he's like, well, the DSA, they're going to say it this way, and I know they're going to do that. And it's like, no, you're getting upset in advance at a reality that you've created just to be like, I'm right, because I'm going to say this. And it's like when you get in a fight with someone and then you're taking a shower later that night. You're like, oh, I should have said this. This should have been my response. But he's trying to do that preemptively. And it just seems like, you've created this boogeyman in your head with the DSA.
Yes.
When you want to be aligned with them on outcomes, but you think that they're going to deliver it the wrong way because of what you've manifested in your mind. The other moment that I thought was really, really important was when you were talking about how his values that he was sharing on Israel, or his policy views, were illiberal. You run counter to being a liberal, to being a Democrat. And I've seen this play out a lot. And why I wanted to talk about the dark woke, and I want to get back to that, with the passing of Lindsey Graham. I saw all these people, and it's the same thing with a lot of the way that Mitch McConnell is talked about right now, where it's my least favorite phrase in the world. It's well, you have to respect. You have to respect his service. You have to respect the office. And I'm like, actually, you don't. Because the values that this nation was founded on is that our rights are not afforded to us by the government, but because we are mankind. And so to care for an office really doesn't make any sense in the, kind of American canon. That's not what we're supposed to do. And that's where the dark woke comes in for me. Is this a thing that you think is fun, or do you think this is a thing that's really starting to shape people's minds around who we should and should not be caring about or giving respect to?
I think you should ask Kyle this question.
I probably should.
But my view is, and to use the Lindsey Graham example, as one, I think there was a previous era of sort of left liberal politics where there would be more of a commitment to oh, he's dead and we should respect and these niceties, blah, blah, blah. And I think that's a foolhardy approach, because the reality is, truly, this may be the last time we really think about Lindsey Graham for a while. I think it's important when you're a public figure to set the record straight. It doesn't have to be in a mean-spirited way, but to set the record straight about who this man was and what his actual legacy is, not some invented DC fantasy of, oh, he was so great and he was so wonderful. No, this was a man who loved war. He loved death. He loved violence. And he spent his career in Washington pushing very successfully, sadly, for the agenda that he was deeply committed to for whatever reason. So for me, the best iteration of dark woke is just dispensing with the platitudes and telling the truth, the unvarnished, ugly, sometimes hard to hear, sometimes offensive truth. And we're not going to play by a different set of rules than the right. they're going to be mean. We can be mean too, because, they deserve it. The leadership of the elected Republicans have destroyed this country. They're destroying the world. They are criminals. And it's disgusting what they've done to the country. And I don't think we should pull any punches about that.
No, I don't think we should. And I think it requires us to have actual people with real worldviews to get back to the Zoran of it all at the beginning. Zoran articulates a worldview. So does Bernie. So do these progressive candidates. That's kind of what Abdul al-Sayed is doing right now. It's why he's getting so much shit. But if you articulate a worldview that is fundamental to who you are, it's very easy to come in and answer questions. I think that's what a lot of people don't realize.
Yes.
How do we get to the point of getting directly to the meat of the worldview with these Dems that you're challenging, that you come on and that are come on your show and you have these conversations with, because you did that with Adam Smith very well. But in the broader public sphere, just people who are maybe watching our shows, or who are starting their own political podcasts, or who are in the activist class, or want to do more organizing. How do we make sure that we're talking about worldviews more, and that we are starting from a place of fundamental beliefs, maybe rather than bigger policy? And although the bigger policy questions are important, but we know where someone starts first.
Yeah, I think it's very important because humans are wired to understand stories and narratives. And I think a big failing of the Democratic Party was that they didn't tell a compelling story about who the villains were in this system and how we ended up in this place of the worst inequality we've ever experienced in our country's history, that is truly immiserating so many and set to only get worse with the advent of AI. So, I think we have to tell that story about the billionaire and now trillionaire class and the way that they have rigged and controlled the system. What a threat that not just represents to democracy. I mean, that is killing democracy. I don't know how democracy can coexist with, a handful of trillionaires who can spend limitless amounts of money to get their way in American elections. We can see this happening in Michigan, where they're dropping $50 million against Abdul to try to distort who Haley Stevens is and who's backing her, and distort who Abdul is, et cetera. So, I think telling that story, because we also have a real opening with the revelations of the Epstein class. If you want to really understand how power works and the level of billionaire solidarity that exists, you could scarcely come up with a better and more clear-cut example than what we saw through the Epstein files revelation. So the problem is not immigrants, it's not trans people. The problem is the billionaire and trillionaire class who they don't care about this country. They care about themselves. They care about each other. That's who they look out for. And that's who we really need to, trim their sails so we can deliver democracy back to the people.
Yeah, and so that's something that Bernie has described these people as, is they have more money than nations. So why would they care about ours? It doesn't make sense. And you see that playing out in Michigan. And this is where I want to close because you're very busy, so I can't keep you all the time. But Abdul al-Sayed right now is facing not only the onslaught of money, but it seems like this coordinated campaign to try to make Haley Stevens cool. I don't think Haley Stevens, and I got some flack from Haley Stevens and her team because while talking extensively about why she misunderstands purposely income versus wealth in America and used that to try to attack her opponent. And I just think that's a fundamental thing that you have to understand the difference between if we're going to, rewrite our tax codes and fix this country. But I made a joke about her voice because she does play it up a little bit. And all of a sudden, all these people online are trying to pretend that Haley Stevens is cool. What have you made of this campaign?
It just all feels very desperate, very astroturfed. I saw someone who posted, she printed signs that say, stick it to them. And Abdul has signs that say Medicare for all, get money out of politics. It has his specific platform planks. And to me, it just demonstrates the perfect distillation of the difference between their campaigns, because he's got substance, specific plans backed up by a worldview and an ideology that is consistent and thought through. And she's got platitudes about how she's going to fight hard and she's going to stick it to him because that's the Michigan way. It's meaningless. It doesn't have any content to it. And so that's why she just ends up being for sale by the highest bidder, because there's nothing else that she's willing to fight for or interested in fighting for in a way that would lead her to standing up against sort of those entrenched interests. So I see that. I see these racialized attacks, which are really disgusting. I mean, Abdul, if I could remind everybody, is the person of color in this campaign, and yet we're being told that his campaign, the people who are voting for him, are not diverse enough. Now we have this whole attack on, oh, you people are so toxic and you're sexist against Haley Stevens, et cetera, which is just a rerun of the toxic Bernie bros conversation from 2016 and again in 2020. It all just feels like they're looking at polls that have her down and kind of desperate and throwing everything against the wall to see what sticks.
Well, I know I said that would be my last question, but you've kind of tipped something off on me now.
Sure.
And I just have to ask one
No
more.
worries.
Because 2028, it's going to be a similar thing. There is going to be we got to fight Trump and beat Trump with people who have not delivered on the actual substance of fighting Trump and beating Trump, with many opportunities to do so. And then there are going to be people who have the specific policy plans to actually change our country fundamentally. And we will not be able to help ourselves. And maybe this is just kind of a question for the people online or the people who talk every day. Do you think that there is like an effort that we need to make ourselves to kind of limit? I don't want to limit what I say, but like, how do you think the online left, I hate to say that because I feel like that's always like a way that it's described terribly, but needs to be engaging to make sure that these smears can't happen? Or do you think that these smears are going to happen always, so we should just say, we'll say what we want?
They're going to happen no matter what. It's just unavoidable. I mean, I wish, I love Abdul. I think he's run a really wonderful campaign. I think he's up against a lot because of the Islamophobic smears, you know, in particular, trying to say he's like sexist, et cetera. But I actually wish he didn't do the my supporters need to stop making fun. Yeah, because
kind of brought attention.
You give them oxygen, and then she acts like she's all, you know, a victim and all aggrieved. It's like, you know, girl, like we all live online. I'm sure right now I can go look in my comments on my Twitter feed and see some things that are way meaner than whatever you said about Haley Stevens.
Be nice to us in the live chat, please.
But yeah, so I think those smears are coming no matter what. I do feel, based on the primary election season so far, that the Democratic base, they're with us. So the more that we can just talk about where we are and expose where our opponents are and where they fall short, the more success we're going to be able to have. So I feel confident that out of that process, we'll be able, whoever the candidates are, we'll be able to get a candidate who's going to hold some real values and be a break from what the traditional Democratic Party elite has been. But it's going to be a fight. You know, it's going to be a dogfight. They're not going to go down. They're not going to give up control of the party easily. So everybody needs to brace themselves for that.
Yeah, I do too feel really great and hopeful as much as I can every single day during this administration about what comes next and what, you know, people power and independent media is building. And you've been doing that so long. I've been watching your show so long. I don't want to, you know, fan out, but I really I do appreciate you hopping on and joining us on Sunday.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Keep killing it. You're doing so amazing out there.
Thank you.
Always fantastic to be joined by someone who is one of the main staples of my media diet, someone who leads the charge for independent media in Krystal Ball. Thank you so much to our three incredible guests. But as we all know, we never wrap up this show without I hope, fan favorite segment. And if it is, please let me know in the live chat because I want to hear from y'all. It is certainly one of my favorite segments. And that is Idiot of the Week. And this week's Idiot is going to the richest man on earth and also the biggest fake smart guy on earth, and that is Elon Musk, best known for cars that trap you inside when they catch on fire and buying Twitter to swing an election and also to try to get people to like him, which didn't really work out. I'd say it did the opposite. And this week, Elon, you are the idiot. You are annoying us all for pretending that you are the world's foremost scholar of Bronze Age Greek accuracy in cinema. Elon, you are not. But you might have seen that Christopher Nolan is out with a new film, The Odyssey. It came out last week, and it is a massive hit. And that's no surprise. It's Chris Nolan. It's his biggest opening ever. $250 million just in the first weekend alone. Now, of course, Elon Musk doesn't like anything that the public enjoys, so he has been furious about this movie. And not even having seen it, he's been furious. He's been upset since January when he posted that Christopher Nolan has lost his integrity. And why, do you ask? Because Lupita Nyong'o was cast as Helen of Troy. By May, Elon had upgraded to calling Nolan an anti-white racist and said Nolan grossly insulted the Greek people. To Elon, the single most important thing about adapting a 3,000-year-old oral poem, I'm sure he has never read, is that the actors need to be white for some reason. Otherwise, it's a symptom of the woke mind virus. But one small issue, Elon, Matt Damon is playing Odysseus. You know, the guy from Boston who isn't exactly Greek, but neither is Lupita Nyong'o. It shouldn't matter. It's a movie. It's a story. It's fantasy. But somehow Elon has a problem with a New England guy with Scottish-Finnish lineage playing the lead. Yeah, Good Will Hunting wasn't Odysseus. We can suspend our disbelief, but clearly Elon can't, because all he's talked about is historical accuracy. But it seems like it's only the historical accuracy police showing up when an actor isn't white. Isn't that funny? Now, normally these right-wing cranks just rant for a while everyone makes fun of them. But because Elon Musk has more money than most countries, unfortunately, he decided that he would remake the Odyssey himself. And guess how he did it? Using AI slop. Yep, he turned on the slot machine, Grok, and posted his 3-minute-long AI-generated trailer made out of stolen footage with an all-white cast. A reminder that the author of the Odyssey, Homer, wrote about gods turning men into pigs and a guy hiding under a sheep to escape a cyclops. This was never historically accurate in the first place. Elon Musk just can't stand watching something make money and get acclaim without him being the one behind it. So he manufactured yet another white pride culture war, farmed engagement off of people who are mad about a movie they haven't seen, about a book they haven't read, and then used it to promote his last place by a mile AI slot machine. Elon Musk, you're a racist. Elon Musk, you're annoying. Elon Musk, you are the idiot of the week. And I would not be surprised if he continues to win this award. But we will continue to call him out while he does. And I am sure my 3 other guests this week will as well. Another thank you to Jessica Tarlov, Congresswoman Yassamin Ansari, and of course, Krystal Ball. And thank you to my friends who helped put this show together. The folks at MeidasTouch, Brett, Ben, and Jordy, out with a book that I'm sure is going to be a bestseller, WTF America. Make sure to go get a copy of the brothers' new book. We talked to Ben about it last week. I know it is going to be a smash hit, and I really know that you're going to enjoy it, because everything that Meidas does absolutely crushes, and that is because of you, the Meidas Mighty, always showing up, always tuning in. I also appreciate everyone watching on my show. I don't know if we have a name yet. I feel like the Koch Army might be verging on a little weird, but we'll figure it out another time. We'll probably figure it out on a Sunday, because that's when we hang out. That is when I appreciate y'all showing up for me. This has been such a fantastic show over the couple of weeks. I think we're at 10 now that we have been doing it, and it is only going to continue to grow, and that is because of y'all. So I hope if you enjoyed this week and the weeks before, I will see you again, as I always do, same time, same place, and as always, on Sunday.